Okay. All right. So welcome everybody, and welcome to the Affordable Housing Strategy Implementation Committee for Tuesday, October the 29th. My name is Mayor West, and I'm the chair of this meeting. So I'll call this meeting to order. Before we do start, I would like to just welcome Christopher Robinson from Habitat GTA, who is a brand new member of our committee. Thank you, Christopher, and we certainly appreciate you being here and with the knowledge that you and your organization brings to this important discussion. So thank you. So I need a motion at this time to adopt the agenda. Councillor Davidson, Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that's okay. She fooled me into thinking that she was on the committee. I need a member of the committee. So Cheryl Guinness, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. Thank you. And disclosures of pecuniary interests or the general nature thereof. I see none of those, Mr. Chair or Mr. Clerk. So adoption of the previous minutes. That was the meeting that we had on March the 5th, 2024. I need a mover for those minutes. Okay, Mike Claire. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. So in today's meeting, we have a delegation, sorry, not a delegation, a presentation that we're going to be listening to from Chun Shu, who is our senior policy planner. It's a 25-minute or so presentation, and so we'll invite Ms. Chu to join us. Here she is. And Ms. Chu, the floor is yours.
That's great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. It's nice to see everyone again. Next slide, please. Before I go over the agenda, I was going to make a couple of introductions, but I see that Mayor West has already introduced Chris Robinson. So thank you and welcome, Chris. Another introduction I'd like to make is Ashley Dickinson, who is our Affordable Housing Project Manager. She is unable to be in attendance today due to a family medical emergency, but you will see her at the next meeting in December. For today's agenda, we'll provide a high-level overview of 4 housing-related initiatives that the city is currently undertaking, and they are a community improvement plan for affordable housing and sustainable design, an update to the city's 2021 housing needs assessment, a peer review of the 2021 inclusionary zoning impact assessment, and finally, a 2024 inclusionary zoning impact assessment. Next slide, please. The first city-led initiative I'd like to speak to is the Community Improvement Plan for Affordable Housing and Sustainable Design. Next slide, please. For ease of reference, I'll use the acronym CIP to describe Community Improvement Plan. The CIP fulfills action items 5.1 and 5.2 of the Affordable Housing Strategy. Next slide, please. The purpose of the CIP is to create financial incentives to facilitate the development of affordable housing and sustainable design in buildings. Funding for the CIP is primarily through the CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund, or I call it short HAF. According to strict requirements from the HAF program, the CIP is designed in such a way to comply with the Housing Accelerator Fund timelines. And this means that eligible projects must pull building permits by November 2026, and that funds must be expended by November 2027. The CIP incentivizes rental housing because there is a dire shortage of rental housing in the city. Presently, the vacancy rate is 1%, which is quite low compared to what is considered a healthy vacancy rate of 3%. It should be noted that the CIP aligns with York Region's proposed update to the Regional Housing and Homelessness Plan, which focuses exclusively on rental housing. We are aiming to bring the final CIP for Council's consideration at the November 20th Committee of the Whole meeting. And if all goes well, the CIP will be implemented in early 2025. Next slide, please. This table shows a summary of the eligibility criteria for developments that are seeking CIP incentives. These eligibility criteria is the minimum threshold applied to all incentives offered in the draft CIP. In terms of geography, the draft CIP applies citywide. The draft CIP targets purpose-built rental housing, including affordable rental units. However, projects that apply for the CIP incentives may contain mixed income units where a portion of the development is affordable units and the remaining portion is market units. Projects may also contain non-residential uses such as community or commercial space. The minimum number of affordable units in a project is 5 units with a minimum project size of 11 units. In terms of affordability, the affordable rents should be at most 125% of the average market rent, which is in line with the region's definition of affordable rental housing. The affordable period should be at least 25 years. With respect to sustainable design, the project should at minimum meet the silver performance level in the city's sustainability metrics program. The incentives are open to all developers, including nonprofit and for-profit housing providers. Of course, partnerships between these two sectors are encouraged. With respect to project feasibility, applicants may be asked to demonstrate that their project is financially feasible through a pro forma. And lastly, applicants must be in good standing with the city, meaning that they do not owe the city outstanding fees or taxes, and that they comply with the city's bylaws and are not involved in litigation with the city. Next slide, please. This slide shows a high-level overview of the incentives offered through the draft CIP. On the right-hand columns are the affordable rents ranging from 80% of the average market rent to 125% of the average market rent. On the left-hand column are the 4 streams of incentives. The first is the per affordable unit grant, which is capped at $150,000 per affordable unit. This grant was formerly structured as a development fee and charges refund. Staff have refined this incentive stream to simplify the process for applicants and staff, and to provide more certainty to applicants related to how much incentive funding they will receive. The intent of this grant remains the same, which is to cover development-related fees such as site plan approval, building permits, development charges, cash in lieu of parkland, and community benefits charges. This grant applies to all 3 of the affordable rent thresholds. The second stream is a tax increment equivalent grant, or short for TEAG, that covers increase in assessment value and its associated property taxes. The third stream is a capital funding grant that is offered for affordable units that are rented at 80% of the average market rent. It is a competitive grant that is awarded to the highest scoring applicant. Lastly, the draft CIP also offers public lands as an incentive if and when municipal lands become available. Next slide, please. The awarding of all incentives will be based on a project evaluation criteria as listed on this slide. They range from housing affordability to achievement of higher sustainable standards, as well as support from other funding programs offered by other levels of government. The criteria also considers if the project is shovel-ready, and it looks at the qualification of applicants. Applicants will also need to demonstrate development and operational feasibility through pro formas. This evaluation criteria is created to enable the city to choose the best and most appropriate candidates because we have limited funding and we cannot fund all potential candidates. This list of general criteria provides transparency in the city's decision-making process, and it allows the city to do its due diligence before giving out significant amount of funds to developers. Lastly, other evaluation considerations may be provided in a separate CIP guideline. Next slide, please. The next set of initiatives I would like to speak to is the update to the city's housing needs assessment and inclusionary zoning impact assessment. The image on this slide is the background report that was completed in 2021 in support of the affordable housing strategy. Within this background report are several sub-reports, and among them is sub-report number 1, which focuses on the housing needs assessment, and sub-report number 4, which focuses on the inclusionary impact assessment. Between this year and last year, the city undertook an update to the housing needs assessment, and it also conducted both a peer review and an update to the inclusionary zoning impact assessment. The city hired Parcel Economics to help with this work. Next slide, please. The purpose of the update to the housing needs assessment is twofold. First is that the updated assessment would provide up-to-date information on housing demand and housing supply to support the analysis on inclusionary zoning. And secondly, the city needed to fulfill a requirement under the CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund to include a review cycle of this housing needs assessment. And so the outcome of this work is that 3 reports will be brought to the Committee of the Whole on November 6th, and they are the update to the housing needs assessment, the peer review of the 2021 inclusionary zoning impact assessment, and then an update to the inclusionary zoning impact assessment, which would be dated 2024. Next slide, please. The updated housing needs assessment identifies the housing gaps by comparing housing demand with housing supply. And it also looks at housing affordability, including core housing need. On the housing demand side, the updated housing needs assessment show that the population in Richmond Hill continues to grow older, particularly for those aged 50 years and older. There continues to be a decreasing proportion of residents in their 40s and children under 10 years old. And this suggests an exodus of young families from Richmond Hill, which is also likely associated with a lack of affordable family-sized housing in the city. On the other hand, smaller households are also growing in the city, and these comprise of the 1-person and 2-person households. On the housing supply side, while the city continues to see a diversity of housing forms, low-density housing remains the dominant form. Rental housing continues to be undersupplied, as the vacancy rate is currently at 1%. And supportive and accessible housing remains undersupplied in the city. With respect to housing affordability, ownership housing continues to be unaffordable to most households, except for the wealthiest in the city. About 40% of the total households in the city are considered cost burden because they spend more than 30% of their household income on housing costs. Additionally, more than 1/3 of the renter households in the city are in core housing need, and that is driven mostly due to unaffordability. Next slide, please. The 2024 Housing Needs Assessment found that the same housing gaps persist since 2021, which validates the following affordable housing strategy goals. The first is to diversify the housing stock to include smaller dwelling units and larger family-sized dwelling units. The second is to increase rental housing options that are in good state of repair and which are affordable to households with low and moderate incomes. The third goal is to increase the supply of accessible and supportive housing options for seniors and for households with a disability or mental health issue. And the last goal is to provide ownership options that are affordable to households with moderate incomes and that are appropriate for larger households. Next slide, please. Now I'll talk about the peer review and update to the inclusionary zoning impact assessment. For ease of reference, I'm going to use the acronyms IZ to represent inclusionary zoning. The city's affordable housing strategy recommended action item 2.1 and 4.5 to implement inclusionary zoning in the city. And so what is IZ? IZ is a tool authorized under the Planning Act, which enables municipalities to require affordable housing as a part of residential development located in protected major transit station areas or in areas established with a community planning permit system. According to provincial legislation, to implement IZ through the city's official plan and bylaws, a municipality must first complete an assessment report. And this is the inclusionary zoning impact assessment. Following this assessment, a peer review of the assessment by a qualified and independent third party is required. Next slide, please. And so in the peer review of the 2021 inclusionary zoning impact assessment, a number of findings were observed. The first is that the 2021 impact assessment did adequately address the underlying intent of the requirements set out in Ontario Regulation 23218. So this is the regulation that regulates how inclusionary zoning would be implemented in a municipality. The peer review also found that the methodology and approach used in the 2021 assessment is generally sound. The assumptions and financial feasibility results in the 2021 study are also reasonable. The interpretation of the research and analysis, including the resulting conclusions and recommendations, are also appropriate. However, the peer review found that the assumptions applied in the 2021 study is unlikely to be reasonable in today's market and legislative context, and so an update to the IZ impact assessment is needed. Next slide, please. Which brings me to the 2024 inclusionary zoning impact assessment. In the updated IZ impact assessment, it was found that inclusionary zoning is not viable at current market conditions for both ownership and rental housing. And the reason is because the macroeconomic conditions have significantly declined, such that both the hard cost and soft costs associated with residential development are drastically higher than those assumed in the 2021 IZ assessment. The updated IZ impact assessment further recommends that notwithstanding current market conditions, the city should consider establishing IZ policies in the official plan and have a bylaw in place so that when the market conditions improve in the future, this tool may be implemented. And secondly, the city may consider offering incentives to help offset the cost of any inclusionary zoning or affordable units. It should be noted that due to the significant change to legislation that impact the assessment of inclusionary zoning, such as Bill 23, Bill 134, and the federal tax rebate on rental housing, staff at the province has advised that the 2024 IZ assessment update would be considered a new assessment report under the Planning Act, and therefore this 2024 impact assessment would require a peer review, and this work would be undertaken in 2025. Next slide, please. And so that concludes our presentation today. Staff recommends that the presentation regarding the update on city initiatives related to affordable housing be received and all comments be referred back to staff. The next committee meeting will be held on December 3rd, again at 1:30. We thank you for your time and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Chu. Very thorough presentation as always. So at this point in time, I'm going to bring it back to members of the committee, and we have a recommended motion to put forward that the presentation regarding the update for the city initiatives related to affordable housing be received, and all comments be referred back to staff. So I need a committee member to move that motion, and if they wish, they can start off with questions and comments. So I see Mike Clare's virtual hand up. So Mike, you're willing to move that motion? Okay, and did you have questions or comments to make at this time?
Yes, I do. If just a quick question. Under the half funding, what was the commitment that the city of Richmond Hill gave to number of new building permits for the duration of the half funding, and what percentage of that commitment for building permits was related to deeply affordable housing?
Okay, I'll send that back to staff. Ms. Chu?
Sorry, I just found my audio. Thank you, Mike, for your question. So yes, you're right. Under the HAF application, we did need to commit to a number of units that would be built by the year 2026, and a portion of that would be also for affordable housing. I would need to dig up those numbers, Mike, in terms of the building permit numbers. But for the affordable units, I believe we have committed to about just a little bit over 230 units, I believe.
I would add, though, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, we didn't commit to, it's a commitment to how many units are going to be built. It's not a commitment to how many units we would approve to be built, like they have to be built. And so, I mean, we're approving a lot more right now in total than is being built, given the market conditions the way they are. I mean, there's no shortage in Richmond Hill of us, getting things through the planning process more efficiently than we have in the past and getting the permits out the door. But what the private developers choose to do after the permit is in their hand is completely up to them. Okay, Mike, did you have any other comments?
That was helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, is there any other questions, comments, or anything from the committee at this time? Councillor Silovitz? Oh, sorry, just a minute. I think, Christopher, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, and then Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you very much, Mayor West. A couple of questions regarding the CIP. The first one being the land piece, making municipal land available. And I see that the target there is 80% rent. So is that meaning that any units delivered on that parcel of land would have to meet that 80%? Or is it like the others that it can be a mixed project?
Okay, Chun.
Thanks for your question, Chris. So our lands program is not, there is no lands that's available currently. What the CIP does is that it enables the municipality to use public lands as an incentive when and if those lands become available. And when those lands become available, we will have a RFP process. So that's a request for proposal process that would outline what the criteria are in terms of eligibility, as well as evaluation of what projects would get awarded. And so the 80% AMR, it applies to affordable units. In terms of mixed income, I think that could be considered, but I think that would be a part of the RFP process when the city is ready to launch it. Yes, so we will consider it in the future when the program is ready.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I guess on that note of application process, is it going to be an open call, or is the intention for applications under the CIP to be a on like a once a year call for application, or will it be ongoing?
For the CIP incentives, when we're ready to launch it, which is in early 2025, there will be information that will be launched on our website. We will reach out to all the stakeholders as well, so the developers and nonprofit housing providers, and there will be an intake period where we're inviting anyone who's interested and who believe their projects are eligible to apply. And through that intake period, then we will further, look at the pool of applicants and make those evaluation.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Jen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for including me. I have a question through you or to Chun. Don't want to put anybody on the spot, but yesterday I heard something quite disturbing, and that was the Federal Conservative Party, through its leader, said that should they win the next election, then the HAF program is going to be removed. It's not going to exist. And they're going to give incentives in another way to any living units that cost under $1 million. So I find this very troublesome, because if we lose that money, we could be in some very serious trouble. Not to get political here at all, but Mr. Mayor, or through you to Chun, do you have any further information about that? Do we stand on a precipice of losing over $30 million?
Well, Chun, why don't you answer it and then I'll answer it after you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Silovitz. I don't have an answer for you. I don't have a crystal ball. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I mean, a big chunk of our funding for the CIP is through the CMHC HAF funding. So we do rely heavily on it. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Councillor, and I read the article this morning as well. And I mean, it is a campaign promise that was made. I mean, I can't. My crystal ball is in the shop right now, so I don't know exactly what will end up happening with regard to that, the outcome of that statement. But I will say, and on behalf of staff have been working very hard on this now since this program was announced, and have developed programs and incentives that go along with those programs to help us map a path forward that we can use these resources to incentivize affordable housing. It, in my opinion, would be a shame to see a program like that put into jeopardy after we've put so much time, effort, and work into creating the program and getting it up and running. And, the important part about this is the part that comes after the program's finalized and all the staff has done all the work on it, and that the incentives can be offered to, real builders, real not-for-profits that can actually implement the work that we need to do to, make a difference in our supply of housing that's more affordable. So, but, I think we need to keep going forward with this and, see where we go from there.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Chun. I appreciate your responses. It really concerned me, and I just wanted to bring it to this committee's attention. And all we can hope is that in whatever manner it does not happen. Thank you.
Okay, any other members or councillors? If you're not a member, you're still more than welcome to ask a question. Okay, I've got Councillor Davidson, but I've got Cheryl Guinness beat you to it, so you'll be next. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Through you, Mayor West, to Chun. I just need a little bit of clarification. The IZ zoning, you said it's not viable right now in this market, which we do understand because real estate is really expensive. Are you saying we are putting a pause on that so there wouldn't be any garden suite, a laneway housing? Is that what I'm getting? I'm a little bit, can I have a little bit clarity on that?
Your question, Chun?
Thank you for your question, Cheryl. Just to clarify, inclusionary zoning is a tool enabled under the Planning Act that would allow for a municipality to require affordable units as a part of a private market development application. And so usually it applies to high density and mid-rises. If we are to have inclusionary zoning policies or bylaw, that needs to be further explored, as to what kind of built form we would require IZ under. But when you speak about garden suites or additional residential units, those typically are not applied under the inclusionary zoning regime. And so currently the city does permit for additional residential units. We are required to do so under the Planning Act. So up to 3 units are permitted, 3 dwelling units are permitted on a ground related lot. So that's like pertaining to single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, as well as townhouses. So those continues to be permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Davidson?
Thank you, and thank you for letting me ask a question through you, Mr. Mayor. It all seems so daunting. Are there people who are going to go for this? And, there's these incentives. Is it your honest opinion that there will be builders and developers that will go for these tantalizing incentives to build more affordable housing?
John?
Thank you, Councillor Davidson, for your question. As we are developing the CIP, so the CIP did go through the planning process where we did consult with stakeholders, and these include the private developers as well as nonprofit housing providers. So we did get feedback from our stakeholders to help inform the CIP. But along the way, of course, it's garnishing a lot of interest from a number of developers, and we are in active conversation with these developers. And so we do know a number of developers who are interested and who are likely going to meet the eligibility criteria for the CIP. We do think there will be uptake.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. And just following up on Councillor Silvett's question, is there a criteria? Is there a follow-up if someone says, yeah, we're going to do it, and then they don't end up doing it, or they don't end up doing it in an affordable way, or if something changes? I assume that's all baked in to the grant process.
Yes. So if you notice on one of the slides, which shows the project evaluation criteria, among them are the qualification of the applicant. So we likely are going to look for applicants who have the experience and expertise, who have been successful in developing affordable housing and operating affordable housing. We also are going to require the applicants to enter into a contribution agreement with the city so that in case if they do default on any of the terms and conditions of the agreement, they would need to give the money back to the city, or perhaps the land goes to the city. And in addition to that, we are looking at the pro formas of the application so that the financially it's demonstrating that the applicant can feasibly develop the project and operate the housing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Anybody else with questions? Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to respond to the last comment about willingness to take this up, looking at that incentive and combining it and stacking it with CMHC's Affordable Housing Fund, as a not-for-profit housing provider, I would jump at this.
Thanks, Mike. That's actually that's what I would expect to hear from anybody that can understand what we're trying to do here. And I agree. I think this is a good program with a good possibility for success, and we sure would not have been able to do it without the support that we're getting through the Housing Accelerator Fund and CMHC. So I agree. I think this is a good way for us to start the ball rolling in affordability. Okay, anybody else have any more comments? Christopher?
Apologies on mute. Thank you, Mayor West, through you. June, is there, or staff, is there an opportunity for support for the planning process for projects going through CIP in terms of extra support to kind of expedite the zoning and planning process in order to speed up the timelines, given there are tight timelines with the half funding and trying to get projects started as soon as possible?
Thanks for your question, Chris. Yes, there is support. So as a part of the implementation of the CIP, we are developing an affordable housing concierge program. And so that program is a one-window program that would help the developer to speed up or expedite their application process, and to also help to let them be aware of other funding programs available through the region, the federal government, and the provincial government to help them stack the funding. And so by the time that the CIP is implemented in 2025, we expect that the concierge program would be also helping with the implementation of that CIP.
I see Director Flores on the screen. Did you want to speak?
Oh, actually, Chun covered it very well.
Okay, all right, good enough. Okay, back to you, Christopher. Any other questions or comments?
No, I think that's all. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? Okay, it would appear that that exhausts our speakers list. So we have a motion on the floor then to receive this presentation and refer all the comments heard today back to staff. All those in favor of that? Okay, that carries. Mike, did you have a hand up for voting, or did you have another comment?
Voting.
Okay, I couldn't tell your voting hand from your comment hand, so that's good. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Again, we really appreciate all the time and effort from everybody here today, the staff, but also to the citizen members, especially in this committee. We really do need to work together on this in order to make the difference that we need to make. So, Kathleen, was that a hand? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could have a little bit of education in regards to the concierge program. Could we have a little bit of education in regards to that? Is there maybe an in-service or something?
Yeah, why don't we get that answer and then we'll move to adjourn. But Chun or Maria, which would like to take that?
Sure, I can address that. I think that's a very good suggestion. That's something that we definitely have been keeping in mind for future Affordable Housing Steering Committee meetings. The problem right now, we have sort of I'd say a de facto program underway. It's actually still under development, but Ashley Dickinson, who is our program manager for Affordable Housing Coordination, has actually been functioning as a pseudo liaison person as we're still trying to develop it. I don't want to go into too much details, but we are supposed to be also hiring another planner to assist with that program development. Unfortunately, we've been having recruitment issues this year. It's been indicative all through the planning side, trying to find professionals on contracts. So we have recently found somebody. So hopefully in the next few months, we can really develop those protocols and have them underway. And then we will bring something back to the steering committee once that's solidified.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody. Okay, so at this point, I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Christopher. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, everybody. And again, we will see you. I think our next meeting was in December, so we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.